Do you think election forgiveness is impossible? I'd like to challenge that thinking some. Maybe your reason is that the person doesn't deserve forgiveness, the hurt can't be made up for, the person will never learn their lesson. Well, on these parts, you may be right. None of us earn or deserve forgiveness from someone else. Many hurts can't be made up for. And some people get caught up in repeating behavior patterns, but they can change given desire and the right set of circumstances. But that doesn't mean that you can't forgive. Forgiveness is about a decision and you emotionally releasing the hard feelings toward another person, which benefits you physically, mentally, spiritually, and relationally. You can still have boundaries and pursue justice. All those things that you thought about that other person can still be true. That other person may never repent or deserve your forgiveness, and they may never learn their lesson. But you can forgive. As you exercise your forgiveness muscle, it helps if you apply this to other people and situations. As you initially train, it may feel uncomfortable. It's just like when you go to the gym and your muscles are just starting to wake up to whatever new movement that you're putting them through as you go to the gym. But the more that you do it, the stronger your forgiveness muscle gets, just like when you train at the gym. Additionally, you'll find that you are less likely to worry about someone repeating a similar pattern of behavior, and there's likely to be less relationship tension when you meet someone that has similar attributes to the person who hurt you. Within a family, friendship, community, workplace, even a single forgiving person can change the interpersonal dynamic so that others are more likely to intentionally set aside misunderstandings and deliberate hurts to accomplish goals or to remain in relationship. In case if we haven't met yet, hi, I'm Sharon. As I watch the reactions to the US election in the last week, I just see signs of friendships and families that are being torn apart because of political differences. Using some of my professional coaching knowledge, I decided to put together a set of impromptu videos to help people that want to forgive those that voted differently so that they can repair their relationships. Thanksgiving's right around the corner, and we're all going to have to sit down with family or friends at that point in time. This series is based upon Dr. Worthington's DIY workbook on reaching forgiveness. This is the fourth of 12 short videos. And through the videos that we've gone through so far, we've been able to process some decisional forgiveness. And so today we're going to start getting into emotional forgiveness. And for the model that we're going to use, it's called the reach model, where each letter in the word reach represents a different step. The first, the R, recall the hurt. The second is E, empathize with the one who hurt you. A is altruistic. It doesn't really start with it, but it's in there. Give an altruistic gift of forgiveness. C, commit to the forgiveness you experience. And H, hold on to the forgiveness when you doubt. And so today we're going to start with recall the hurt and get a little bit into empathizing with the one who hurt you. For the first exercise today, we're going to end up asking if you can change your mindset. Are you ready to grow? There are two different types of mindsets. Some mindsets are fixed, others lead to growth. Fixed mindsets may seem good. It might seem true that you simply can't forgive a person and that that person and yourself will never change. But fixed mindsets keep you in the same place in life. Growth mindsets are a little bit riskier. They assume you can change and grow. But when you have a growth mindset, the future isn't fixed. You never know what can end up happening. So, are you ready to step into growth? So, moving into the next exercise, 4.2, the importance of being a forgiver. How important is it for you to be a forgiving member of your family, friendship, workplace, church, community, or country? In the comments, share which group or groups you would most like to influence and why. For me, it always starts with faith and family, then into community, as I help to share what I've learned and experienced to help others overcome similar challenges or that are in a similar situation. Because even when I was working in my corporate role, I always thought about the things that we were doing in the workplace to benefit the consumer and to benefit the community. If I could create more jobs, then I was helping the community to being able to grow, as well as helping the company to grow. And personally, I think it's really important. I think that it's relationships can continue where to have people hurting each other if someone doesn't step back and begin the process of forgiving and then start showing others how you can intentionally disarm the hurt. So the next exercise for today is 4.3, describe the hurt differently. At the beginning of this set of videos in exercise 1.2, you wrote your story of the hurt you want to decide to forgive and experience emotional forgiveness toward the person who hurt you. This example that we've been working through is all in regards to election forgiveness. So take a look at your notes of what you wrote down in that very first video. That was exercise 1.2 if you're following along in the workbook. We aren't going to get anywhere if we keep telling ourselves the same story repeatedly. It's like the fixed mindset that we talked about. If you keep saying the same stories, you're going to keep getting the same outcomes. We need yet another objective, yet still true story to give us an opportunity to make a choice and to see different outcomes. Remember those choose your own adventure books back when we were little? It's kind of fun. You get to the end of the chapter and then you'd pick what the character needed to do based on which direction to take the story. This is the same type of view. We're taking a different look at the situation so that instead of telling the same story that you've had before, going into the same actions, the same motivations, you're going to look at it through a different lens to see what other outcomes are possible, to see what other perspective that it is. So recall the event again, but this time as an observer, not as yourself, to get some distance on the story. So this first part of this exercise is to write the story again, but this time without emphasizing how bad the wrongdoer is or how much you've been victimized. Take a look at what it is without some of that mind chatter that goes on as you're in the middle of an intense situation. So you might want to pause the video or feel free just to write as I tell a little bit of my story from as if it's written by a third party observer. So the third party observer sees a family sitting at dinner. There's an older man, a adult male, a teenage male, and two women sitting at the table. One man tells a teenager seated next to him that he must be doing so well adapting to the high school environment because he has a strong and smart mother. As he touches the hand of the woman sitting next to him, he states that he is a better person for having married a strong and smart wife. The older man at the table responds, yes, my daughters are wonderful. All the more reason it's time for a woman president. This country has been late to recognize women. It took about 150 years to get the vote for women, and it's been roughly 100 years since then. It's about time for a woman president. The first man responds by changing the topic of conversation. Yes, your daughters are great. Happy birthday again, nodding to the woman seated diagonally from him. How's the food? Anyone need anything else? So if you notice, that's very different than my initial story, which was colored completely by my mind and mental chatter. I was not participating in the conversation, just hearing it and seeing all the potential outcomes that came out from it. So this was a very just objective, fact-based, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, without any of my emotional tone coloring the situation. So, as you compare the two stories, what are at least three differences that you notice between the two of them? The big differences for me is that because this was just based upon what specifically was said and occurred, none of my inner catastrophizing discussions were included. None of the this worst case scenario of how this is gonna blow up to being a really personal fight in the middle of this restaurant. And none of my memories are there that makes me think that this is because we've seen this type of opening line lead into these types of big situations. And none of the thoughts that I had of why is he doing this now? We've agreed not to talk politics when we have everybody together. And none of the relief I felt about having how my husband was able to change the topic of conversation and steer away from this hot zone. None of that's in this version of the story. This is truly just reflective of my father, the older person at the table, just stating his beliefs. To an observer, it may have even seemed like the older man was cut off and not really listened to as we recovered to the family norms of not speaking about politics. So, what differences did you note? It's probably a little too personal, so I'm not asking you to put in the comments, but if you're feeling brave and courageous, I would love to hear. The next exercise is giving the hurt away. So we're going to repeat a variation on that exercise where we were holding on to the grudge. So if you have your objects on your desk, go ahead and grab them again. So to remind you of what you were prepared to do, we're going to repeat this exercise. You'll get the most out of this exercise if you use your body, even though you did this earlier. So you're going to want to stand, and as you did in the previous exercise, let me get back on camera frame. You want to reach your hands out and hold in your hands and hold your arms out and squeeze onto that object and hold on as tightly and tightly and tightly and tightly as possible. And think about what you're doing with the hurt. You're trying to hold it and contain it inside your hands and at an arm's length from you. After about a minute of holding out your arms and standing, your arms are going to feel tired and heavy. Can you see how this is like holding on to grudges? And think about it. Grudges are not just something that's physically in your hands and preventing you from grasping onto something else. Anytime you have a grudge and your emotions are all bound up and tied up in your body, it is pretty much the same thing. When you have something in your hands and you're holding it tight, you can't make room for something. You can't make room in your heart for love if you're holding too tightly into to grudges. Now, once you've done this, imagine yourself releasing this hurt in the safety and privacy of where you are right now. Think, I decide to forgive my wrongdoer. Say it with me. I decide to forgive the name of the person you're thinking about. It's like changing from a website that makes you feel stressed to one that makes you feel free and restful, or changing the radio station to having a calm song versus something that's grating on your nerves. Just one click. To symbolize this, regardless of whether you want to emotionally forgive at this moment or not, open your hands and let your arms fall suddenly to your sides, imagining that your decision to forgive drags along a release of negative emotions toward the wrongdoer. You may choose to do this exercise while holding a physical object that represents the hurt. I personally found that that was the most valuable way because you can really feel it. It's like you're holding, oops, sorry for banging the mic. You can really hold on to that sense of what it is to tight fist and to hold really on to that anger and the hurt and to protect yourself with the fists wrapped around an object. You might want to make a real decision to forgive the person right now if you have not done so. If you do it, it does not necessarily mean that you feel much differently toward the person. Remember, decisional and emotional forgiveness are different. The next sections will have you'll have a greater effect on your feelings. In these upcoming sections, you'll work through emotional forgiveness. And don't forget your decision to forgive. When you practice decisional forgiveness, you recall the hurt. Then you make a decision to act more positively toward the person. You agree to stop holding a grudge and to try treating the person as a valuable person. You could repeat this later after you try to change your feelings about the person. If you've not been able to make a decision to forgive right now, you might find it a little bit easier later on as we get through more of these exercises. Getting into the next exercise, 4.5, we do things for a reason. Think about this. We all do things for reasons we think are good at the time. We always work from them our best intentions, right? These may not seem like good reasons to the people who might have been hurt, though. We have all experienced hurting others, even when we have the best intentions, and so we can understand that someone who hurts us may have believed that his or her reasons were good, or that they didn't intend to do any hurt. So think about a time when you ended up hurting someone unintentionally. Before, during, and after you hurt the person, what did you feel, think, see, and do? So while you take a moment to jot this down, I'll share a little bit of a story from my end. So, thinking about a time when I hurt someone, there was plenty of workaholic moments in the past when I was too busy or tired to call my parents, or when I was mad over recent family arguments or unsure of how to handle it. So, I didn't check in with them. So, as I was protecting myself, I was hurting others, and I was really just thinking about myself, particularly in those time frames when I was mad, or thinking about work when those times when I put work as being more busy than time with them. So, I didn't think about it. I was just so self-absorbed and focused on myself. I didn't really even think about what other people might feel or how their reactions would be. So I unintentionally did hurt their feelings because I didn't prioritize enough time with them. So hopefully you've thought of a similar situation for you in terms of when you hurt someone. So now, given that you recognize that there are times when, even though you don't intend to, you do hurt other people's feelings. Let's flip this. So while it can be difficult, try to imagine that your wrongdoer might not have meant to harm you. So in the situation that I have in regards to election forgiveness, there's definitely not an intention to harm. On the surface, it's intended to be supportive or just a statement of fact. It's that deer in the headlights response I have after having been in so many discussions that started off with an innocuous statement like this that turned into mean and personal attacks as everybody got really into the arguments on their political positions. And so, compared to some of the videos I watched, I know that this is a very mild response in a situation for this type of election forgiveness. No one in my family is moving out of the country. No one's super depressed. No one's joining the 4B movement or being kicked out of the house or any of these extreme examples that I've seen in the videos. And if you have that going on in your family, I can't even imagine what you're going through. Voting is supposed to be just an expression of what we want out of the government. But this time, and like in some of these recent elections, many people have made it feel so much more than just a statement of personal preference. At a base level, I really hope people aren't voting to spite someone or to cause pain. But you never know with human nature. I did see a video where someone was using voting differences to break up because they had tolerated differences of opinion when they were dating for the purposes of having sex. So maybe even in some cases, voting differences was an intention to hurt somebody, where there was an ulterior motive that was part of the bigger situation. Relationships can be so complicated. So I absolutely get that this can be difficult to imagine that the person you perceive as the wrongdoer might not have meant to harm you. They just may be thinking about themselves and focused on what it is that they're going through. So moving into the next exercise, trying to understand why the person hurt you. So think about the hurt you are trying to forgive. Write about what you think the wrongdoer was experiencing. It's tempting to think of wrongdoers as evil and unkind, and sometimes they are. Sometimes they unintentionally hurt people, but sometimes they act with intention to try and make you feel pain. But often in our own hearts, we can see that we might have provoked the person, or that that person might have meant well, or that the person might have been under pressure and just made some bad decisions, which might have made the situation a little bit easier to understand. So we're going to go through 4 questions and just think about it from this perspective, just to see if this helps you understand a little bit more about why the person hurt you. Can you see any of those things working in your relationship with the wrongdoer? So, did you provoke the person at all? Did you say something and then they responded as in a reaction? Might the person have meant well and unintentionally hurt you? Might the person have been under a lot of pressure and just reacted, not really thinking about the outcome of what their behavior would be? So as I take a look at the situation, I didn't provoke anything. I hadn't said anything, and my husband, as he was going through the conversation, he was really just trying to give a compliment to my sister whose birthday we were celebrating, beef up the confidence of my nephew who had just started in high school, and just to throw in a compliment to myself by opening the conversation about women. So I wouldn't say that that was provocative. That was just really supportive of the people in the family. So dad probably started it off in commenting about the strength of the women, and it just made him think about politics as a compliment truly to his daughters, not really thinking about where his mind was going and what it could lead into. And no one was under pressure. It was just a conversation over at dinner. So, what about your situation? Did any of those questions resonate with your situation or give you some different perspective? So, in closing, that's the activities that we have for today. In this lesson, you have tried to get a different look at what happened when the person hurt you. This different perspective does not excuse the other person for hurting you. It just helps you to understand him or her better. This is a crucial step to emotionally forgiving the person. This is for your personal reflection. You don't need to talk to the person about it at all. You don't need to end up identifying what their motives were. Was it intentional, unintentional? And so, as you went through these exercises, were you able to get any more positive perspective about the person who harmed you? A little, quite a lot, some, not yet? Give some thought to it. For me, I'd say I certainly have gotten a little bit better perspective in regards to it, and I think that I have a better objective framework. As I mentioned, I'm very intellectual, thought oriented, and try and think through things rather than emotionally process them. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this comes up. So in this lesson, I really do hope that you've learned some things that will help you forgive. You've learned that you can give the hurt away. It's as simple as opening your hands and letting go of a tightly held grudge. A decision to forgive will feel immediately like relief. Just the decision will feel like relief. But you still might experience some times of resentment, bitterness, hostility, hatred, anger, and anxiety. You can get rid of these feelings, but they're slower to go away. It's a process. They tend to hide and resurface at different times, and they can be surprisingly strong. The process of replacing these negative emotions is called emotional forgiveness, and that requires time and effort. Tomorrow we'll continue to go into empathizing with the one who hurt you. I truly hope that this is helping you to shift some of your perspective and help you begin the process of forgiving someone close to you that has political differences. If you have any questions on the exercise, please email me at sharon@whisperingfieldswellness.com. If you have a desire to explore forgiveness as a way to improve workplace relationships, let me know. I'm developing a coaching package and would love your input in return for some free mentoring or coaching as you help me test the materials. See you tomorrow. Have a blessed day.